Hi, welcome to Museum Nights. I'm Eric Siegel, and I'm going to just go ahead and check and make sure that everything is looking good here. Um, what's the live feed look like? Looks beautiful. Okay. So Museum Nights. Tonight is Making Her Story, celebrating our exhibition Breaking the Frame, women artists in the Harn Collections. We're going to have dancing, or dancers. We're going to have students talking about works of art and breaking the frame, and we'll be joined by photographers talking about creative practice in photography. Want to remind you of a couple of things before we get going. One is that the Harn is actually open to visitors. Museum nights and large programs, all of our programs currently, are online. But we are open to visitors at the museum. Current hours are Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Thursday through Saturday, 10 to 5, Sunday, 1 to 5. Those hours could change, so please go to harn.ufl.edu to double check current hours. A couple things I want to signal ahead. You'll notice at the bottom of this slide we're looking at, there's a bit.ly, a quick link, bit.ly/mnharn. At the end of the evening, we'd love you to, or whenever you check out, to share some feedback with us. It's a quick, I think, 4-question survey. So feel free to type that into your web browser anytime. I'll give you the link again later. We'd love your feedback about what works, what we could do better. Tonight's Museum Nights, as I said, focuses on breaking the frame women artists in the Harn Collections. They're at your top left of your screen. But of course, there's a lot more to see at the museum. On your screen, you're seeing a selection of what's currently on view. Every day to the extraordinary highlights from the Korean collection, Dreaming Alice, Maggie Taylor Through the Looking Glass. I do want to call your attention to Peace Power Prestige, Metal Arts in Africa, which closes November 29th, so that's pretty soon. And there's many other exhibitions. Again, harn.ufl.edu is where you can go to learn about what's going on at the museum in terms of exhibitions and also in terms of programs. And if you throw a /Harn at Home on to that link, you'll go directly to our Harn at Home page. Next Wednesday, I think we're going to be releasing our Harn at Home activity that builds on Breaking the Frame, the exhibition we're featuring tonight. And that activity, Fun for All Ages, will feature this work here. We're looking at Moonlight Sonata by Bizrat Shababa. And it's a wonderful work. It features black light, it features music, sound. So if you can see it in the museum, you'll enjoy it, but you'll certainly love to visit us online for this activity. So let's jump into our agenda tonight. Museum Nights, Making HERstory. Breaking the Frame, obviously celebrating women artists in the year 2020, which marks 100 years of women's suffrage, but of course women's suffrage that continues to involve fighting for justice and representation for all women and all people. Our program tonight features women creatives. We're going to begin by introducing Breaking the Frame, then telling her story. We'll have her story in conversation and dancing her story. Museum Nights, this is just our introduction slide. And here I want to flag to you the students who will be speaking. Helena Chen, Maria Paula Varela, Lara Colquitt, and Maria Karan will speak about 4 works in Breaking the Frame, and you'll see those works when they're talking. We'll be joined by Jillian Marie Browning and Erin Gordon. Excuse that typo there. I apologize, Erin. It's Gordon. She's the director of Southeast Museum of Photography. Jillian Browning is a colleague here at the University of Florida and an MFA in photography. And they are going to share a really insightful conversation with us. Looking forward to that. We will also be presenting the dance performance at 6:30 by Meredith Farnham, her Fragments. We're going to jump right into that without much introduction, but we'll love to have you join our Q&A afterwards. You'll see the dances performed by 4 dancers, Jordan DeRosie, Kristen O'Neill, Jerry Lynn Ratchik, and Bella Sheriff, and that's really exciting to see them dancing live online. There's our Harn at Home activity again. And a reminder about the bit.ly for our survey. We invite you to take the survey, bit.ly/mnharn. I think we can go ahead and jump right into the evening's program.
So hello, everyone. I am Carol McCusker. I'm the curator of photography at the Harn, and I welcome you to the Harn's most recent exhibition. It just went up a few weeks ago, and it's called Breaking the Frame, Women Artists in the Harn's Collections. And that's collections plural, meaning that the art in Breaking the Frame is from the museum's 5 collecting departments. So we have contemporary, modern photography, African, and Asian. It was curated by each of those departments' curators. So there's Dulce Ramon, Susan Cooksey, Elisa Payton, and myself. And what the whole motive of this exhibition is to celebrate the Harn's 30th birthday year, which is 2020. And it coincides with the 100th anniversary of the women's suffrage. And it also advances the Harn's 2012 strategic plan. And that's still very important to us and in place. And that is to put more first-rate women artists into the museum's outstanding collection. We feel sure that you'll find some new works here. We did actually purchase some expressly for this exhibition, but then you'll find some others that we've never exhibited before, and some that you'll be familiar with. And it's kind of you getting reacquainted with those familiar works, because in this new context, these artworks are in conversation with each other in a very unique way. To the right and left of each image, there'll be new associations that you can make in concept and in form. For instance, the shared feeling in form that you'll see in the Carrie Mae Weems photograph. It's put beside a lithograph by the German artist Kata Kollwitz. Both works of art are about women's protective gestures with their arms and hands, giving solace to the family that they encircle. Both are very moving as they emote an uncertainty and sorrow in one instance, and then safe harbor in grace in the other. There are many more instances like this that can make you wonder about whether gender matters in art making. I mean, can it be detected if a woman made a work of art as opposed to a man? But no matter, these 40 diverse and superbly realized works of art will doubtless give you pleasure.
So that was a wonderful introduction to Breaking the Frame by curator Carol McCusker. And having had an overview, we're going to jump right in to see our first presentation about an artwork. This is Helena Chen speaking about a 19th century Chinese hanging scroll by Seiko. And let me just roll that, see if we go.
This is a Japanese painting in the form of a hanging scroll, newly acquired by the Harn Museum of Art in 2016. It depicts a winter scene around the Shinobazu Pond in Tokyo. In loose brushwork, the painting shows 2 trees surrounded by reeds and willow in the foreground, another few trees merging into the evening mist, and a flock of crows scattered on the sky. In the inscription wrote by the artist on the upper left corner, Seiko states that this painting is a reconstruction of her dream. But more importantly, it is her way to pay homage to Ni Zan, a famous Chinese artist in the 14th century. A well-known story, also included in the inscription, states that after Ni Zan painted bamboos, viewers always mistaken them as raisin. Seiko values the fact that Ni Zan was able to capture the spirits of the objects, instead of confining himself in merely depicting formal likeness.
In the last sentence of her inscription, Seiko made fun of herself by saying that viewers were not able to recognize the crows in the painting. Here in this painting, she is imitating the style of Ni Zan. We can see the duplication of strokes, the network of a loose,
rapidly applied brush stroke that unify the painting's surface, the increasing presence of abstract element, the
background with a
general sense of haziness, and there's no stable space accordance. Here, a debate between realism and expressionism is hinted. This type of painting is known as the Southern School painting, or nanga in Japanese. It's a kind of Japanese literary painting. It valued the untrammeled style, the unfettered and even wayward engagement with the excitement of life. This style prioritizes amateurism, of working without concern for order and restrained draftsmanship, but painting expressively and emphasizing on leisure, qualities we sometimes associate with Impressionism. Seiko was a woman artist activated in the Meiji and Taisho period. She was born in 1837 as the fourth daughter of a high-ranking samurai. Her later birth was to a certain extent fortunate because she was removed from the kind of arranged marriage. Her family's high-ranking position allowed Seiko to obtain a great education since a very young age. She received a thorough education in Kengaku, or the study of Chinese classics. Her training started from copying Chinese literary paintings, including those masterpieces by Ni Zan, available in Japan largely through the format of woodblock prints. The placement of two twisting trees in the foreground of the painting reminds viewers the masterpieces by Ni Zan, such as the one now collected in the National Palace Museum of Taiwan. Similar composition also existed in many Japanese paintings in the 18th and 19th century, such as one hand scroll by Sakaki Hyakusen, though the ink is wetter and the format horizontal. This painting by Seiko was made after she arrived in Edo, the former name of Tokyo. In spring 1865, not long after that, she moved herself into the heart of Shitaya Bunjin circles that were constituted by the leaders of Edo's literary world. In the winter of 1865, at the age of 28, Seiko hosted a party at a pavilion on Shinobazu Pond. This kind of party is usually referred to as literary gathering, where participants, they discuss, view, and paint paintings. They also drink sake and write poetries. This painting may also serve as a remembrance of the literary gathering.
That was a really wonderful presentation by Helena Chen, a doctoral student here at UF. I love the idea of thinking about literati or literary gatherings, talking about paintings, which we're doing tonight. Maybe some of you are drinking sake, and perhaps we'll all paint a little later. I would encourage that. We have 3 more short presentations. The next is by Maria Paula Varela, another doctoral student here at the University of Florida in art history, and she'll be speaking about Jane Webb Loudon's natural history paintings, and also perhaps a little bit of a sci-fi bent twist to it as well. Let's take a look.
Hello, my name is Maria Paula Varela. I'm a 3rd-year PhD student at UF, and I will be talking today about Jane Loudon's 46 Datura Tatula from 1840. Now, Jane Webb was born in 1807 and she died in 1858. She was the daughter of a very wealthy merchant and his wife, who unfortunately died when Jane was only 12. So after her mother's death, she and her father embarked upon a very lengthy journey across Europe, where she was exposed to many different cultures and languages. And upon their return, unfortunately, her father's business began to flounder and eventually went bankrupt. In fact, her father died a very poor man. So at the very young age of only 17, Jane Webb was both an orphan and penniless. So she only had her intellectual resources to sustain herself, and that is what she used. She published a 3-volume novel anonymously, which she entitled The Mummy, A Tale of the 22nd Century. And it was about the ancient Egyptian pharaoh Cheops, who comes to life in the year 2126. And it was a very critically acclaimed book. And it is now considered a pioneering work of science fiction because it was not an established genre at the time. And it is also a proto-feminist work of literature. So as I said, it was very critically acclaimed, and among the very positive reviews her book The Mummy got, one of them was by the very distinguished Scottish botanist John Claudius Loudon, who was particularly intrigued by the steam-powered plow that Jane Webb had envisioned for the future. And he sought out to meet this author, thinking it would be a male. And in fact, it turned out to be Jane Webb. And they eventually married a year later. So, as I mentioned, John Loudon was a botanist, and she became very quickly very exposed to that discipline. And Jane Webb, now Loudon, quickly realized that all of the literature on botany and horticulture was extremely arcane and parochial. And it was very evidently designed for a public of pundits and experts. She noticed that there was an immense lacuna of literature for a beginning audience, an entry-level book. And that is what she sought out to do. So we see here a page from one of those books, one of these entry-level books that she designed to the public of botany and horticulture to a middle-class audience, but more specifically to a female audience who had theretofore been excluded from the discipline. So here we have page 46 on the Datura genus. Pictured here, it's a very poisonous plant, and this is from her book, Lady's Flower Garden. We see on a very blank, two-dimensional background, these plants that emerge through very careful chiaroscuro modeling, almost three-dimensionally from this two-dimensional background. And this composition is very much in line with certain conventions of the botanical manuscript tradition. For instance, we see every element of the flower, even if all of those elements are not manifested simultaneously in nature. Furthermore, next to every plant, we see these small numbers with their corresponding names at the bottom, written in a very elegant and slanted script, which in paleography is known as the botanist script. So both of these adhere to botanist conventions. Her books circulated widely. They were immensely popular, and they were acclaimed not only for their educational purposes, but for their aesthetic ones as well. They were seen as drawing books for their exquisite draftsmanship. They were seen as models to be emulated. And we can see some of these aesthetic components, for instance, in the very elegant bouquet-like composition that Loudon chose for this particular page. And we can also see it, for instance, in the way the light hits this red element here, exposing and revealing a cherry-like texture, or how this leaf falls almost capriciously over this petal, obscuring it didactically, but nevertheless creating a very pleasant aesthetic effect. And in that sense, we can thus place Loudon's work in the tradition of the Dutch flower painting. Therefore, Loudon was remarkably independent and talented in many fields, and her artistic talent was certainly complemented by her immense pedagogical spirit in wanting to bring the discipline of botany to a much wider audience, and specifically to a female audience. Therefore, her work, as I have tried to explain today, is very much artistically and socially inflected.
Wow, what a wonderful presentation on a natural history print, a bouquet of flowers currently on view again in Breaking the Frame, Women Artists in the Harn Collection. A really wonderful exhibition drawing on the breadth of collections of the museum. Our third presentation is by Laura Colquitt, another doctoral student at the University of Florida in art history, speaking about an untitled work by Carrie Mae Weems.
My name is Laura Colquitt. I'm a PhD candidate at the University of Florida, specializing in modern and contemporary art. I will be discussing Carrie Mae Weems's untitled artwork from 2008. The black and white photograph features 4 women donning angel wings, circumscribing a 5th woman positioned directly in the center of the image, dividing it along an imagined y-axis. The artwork is part of Weems's Constructing History series, a collection of staged photographs reproducing important moments in 20th century history. Weems recreates iconic images in theatrical poses, leading to the crescendo of 1968 and its aftermath. Since the images are based on famous events, reimagined and reconstructed by Weems, they are slightly uncanny, testing the memory of the viewer both perceptually and cerebrally. It's as if the photos challenge your visual acuity while simultaneously asking you to recall the significance of the evoked event. Carrie Mae Weems, born 1953 in Portland, Oregon, is an inventive and productive artist. Though her work spans multiple mediums, she is best known for photography. Holland Cotter, New York Times art critic, described Weems in 2014 as superb image maker and moral force, focused and irrepressible. Through her art, she grapples with questions of race, gender, history, and identity. As evidenced by the 2008 untitled photograph, the artist often presents a multi-layered and complicated relationship between narrative, both implied and explicit, and image. She pushes back against simple interpretations, reframing ideas in ways that prod viewers to notice the often obscured issues embedded within society. Her artistic framing guides us beyond merely seeing towards inner reflection and personal deliberation. Weems's art continues to inspire contemplative rigor. In her most well-known project, the Kitchen Table series from 1990, the artist puts herself both in front and behind the camera. Consisting of 20 photos and 14 text panels, Weems sets up and performs moments of private tableaus centered around a plain butcher block table. The kitchen acts as the heart of the home as Weems expertly introduces unspoken conflict or quiet tenderness in these poignant displays. Similar to the Constructing History series, Weems's interest lies in creating formally alluring compositions, well-balanced, proportioned, and visually intriguing in order to provoke profound rumination. Weems's untitled artwork engages with another theme that the artist has explored throughout her career. The theme is power. In the photograph, there are 2 specific instances of dynamic relationships at play. First is the dimension of race. It is important to note that women of color are the focus here, specifically the Black woman in the center. The cropping, configuration, and contrasting colors help move our eye directly to the woman's face. Placing this figure in the most prominent position of the work harkens back to Weems's play on art historical tropes with her 1997 series Not Manet's Type. Here, the woman of color is the protagonist, not relegated as subordinate. In fact, the lone white woman in the composition occupies a background placement. Second is the topic of gender and promotion of female agency. In the arrangement, we see figures dressed as angels supporting one another. Their arms are buttressing each other's bodies in a supportive embrace. Absent men, the angel women work together in this nature scene. However, and very importantly, they have not been sexualized for our gaze. Instead, we are privy to a display of empowerment within a woman-only space. Thus, the attention to feminist concerns in Untitled fits well within Breaking the Frame Women Artists in the Harn Collections. Not only is this photograph composed and produced by a female artist, it emphasizes women's subjects in an unfettered way. The tender encirclement, the unapologetic occupation of space, and the focus on Black women assist in reframing our history. Therefore, images like Weems's Untitled help disrupt the archetypical displays of women subjects so often found in museums.
What a terrific introduction and deep look at that photograph by Carrie Mae Weems. Really beautiful and lovely photograph on its own to experience in the gallery and to experience, as Carol mentioned in her introduction, situated next to the Katakolwitz work, and something you can experience independently, but also with the insights Laura provides, really very much enriching. We have a fourth and final student video exploring works in Breaking the Frame, and this is Maria Caran, an undergraduate art history student at the University of Florida and a former intern in curatorial, worked with Carol McCusker also. And this is a really wonderful personal response to Rania Matar's photographic installation in Breaking the Frame.
Hello everyone, my name is Maria Caran and I am a recent graduate from the University of Florida with a BA in art history and a minor in women's studies. Today I'm going to be talking to you about this set of images right here by artist Rania Matar. Rania Matar is Lebanese born, like myself, and is an American photographer who is currently based in Boston. And we're looking at a collection of photographs from her most recent series, Across Windows. It is an in-progress documentation of human relations to both one another and also the outside world during the COVID-19 pandemic. In her project statement, Matar refers to the virus as an equalizer, given that it has placed pretty much all of us under a state of isolation, of quarantine. We're confined to our private homes and we're aching for the familiarity of the outside world, of simple pleasures that we once had and took for granted for so long. Simultaneously, however, quarantining and isolation, either alone or with loved ones, has allowed us all, at least those of us with the privilege of going through this relatively unscathed, to be reminded of the importance of family, of being with the ones you love during a collectively traumatic time, and of how precious time and space truly are. Matar's project explores the intimacy of those confined under a single roof together, as well as those who have been quarantining solo. Moreover, photographing everyone through a door or through a window has presented its own set of challenges, causing Matar to push the boundaries of traditional human interaction, more specifically interaction between an artist and her subject. For most of these images, a barrier separates Matar from her models, thereby having forced her to figure out other means of communication to direct her participants, or even daring to just let go of that artistic direction altogether and allowing the people to really do or act however they want to in front of her lens. And as you can see, the results turned out pretty successful in spite of the challenges. What began as a preliminary exploration with close friends and family quickly became a very popular project, and so many strangers reached out to Matar via social media wanting to take part. Of the 4 images on display in Breaking the Frame, perhaps my favorite is this photograph of a girl named Ruth. Not only is her gaze so incredibly captivating, but it is the way that Matar has chosen to frame her within the composition, almost as though she has become a part of the outdoor environment being reflected onto her window. And on that note, that is a very common theme throughout the series. No matter what the circumstances, Matar always wanted the outside included in the frame. Whether it was through emerging, such as this one, or the capturing of nature through partially opened windows, which you can see in this image as well. Moving back to Ruth, the merging of the outside and the model is almost believable. You can't really tell what's real and what isn't, which is a common theme of our world today. Writing about her work, Matar does in fact state that the sense of being inside or outside was skewed throughout the documentation process, suggesting that although she had been outside and looking in, she simultaneously saw the outside reflected onto the person in front of her. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I am Lebanese born and raised, having only moved to the US around 4 years ago. My very first trip to the Harn in 2016 was also my first encounter with Matar's work, and I have been an admirer ever since. Although I've been watching this series unfold on her social media for most of the summer, it became that much more important to me after August 4th, when Matar and I's country, Lebanon, suffered a horrific explosion resulting from extreme government negligence. As an expat, I had never felt more trapped than I had that day, including the weeks that followed in the aftermath. Of course, being thousands of miles away acts as that physical barrier, and every inch of me longed to be there in spite of that, and for many moments, all of me felt as though I was there, so kind of skewing time and space. And even if I don't necessarily see it sometimes, I hope that those on the outside looking in may recognize that Lebanon is reflected in me, as Matar has reflected the outside world looking onto her participants. These images are very important to me, and I hope that after watching this, you may be inclined to come and see them in person. So thank you.
That was such a wonderful presentation by Maria, introducing us to the works by Rania Matar on view as part of Breaking the Frame. Really excited by what she had to say, the personal insight, and also the insight to Matar's work. I hope you'll come and enjoy. The four students together covered from the 19th century through the 21st century, from China to Europe to the United States. I love the breadth of discussions that we've enjoyed so far. We're going to now turn to the dance performance, which I'm super excited about because I don't believe I've ever seen live online dance. This is just a new experience for a lot of us. Meredith Farnham is the choreographer of Fragments, which she'll present with her four dancers. She is an MFA choreographer at Jacksonville University, has taught here in Gainesville at Santa Fe College, at UF, for the city of Gainesville, and very widely. Technology willing, Meredith, if you're ready to take over, you are in charge. And perhaps we will check in the background. Make sure that you're there. Great.
Yep, I'm ready.
Okay.
Moment. Thank you.
I'm going to blank out myself. Actually, I need to say, while Meredith is getting that set up, we're going to have a Q&A with Meredith afterwards. So please, if you have questions or thoughts or responses to her piece, throw them in the chat on the YouTube live stream, and we will share them with Meredith. Q&A with Meredith after this dance performance.
time present and time past are both perhaps present in time future, and time future contained in time past. If all time is eternally present, all time is unredeemable. What might have been is an abstraction remaining a perpetual possibility only in a world of speculation. What might have been and what has been point to one end, which is always present.
Meredith, wow. That was a really remarkable experience. Not just for me, but for the viewers. I'm watching the chat, and let's see, people are, there's something almost ghostly about the quality of Resume. It adds such a rich sense. Someone says, I absolutely agree. I said that I felt really connected to the dancers in their own environment in a way that when you're in an auditorium and on stage, you don't, they're distant, they're other people, they're dancers, and this is much more intimate. And someone agreed with that. And those were their words, yet intimate. A lot of strong response, very positive response. Thank you so much. And you did such a great job. To our viewers, I have to say that your handling of the technology was amazing. I'm sure you were super nervous, but you did a great job. It looked wonderful.
Thank you.
Mimi asked a question, and we have a few minutes for Q&A. Oh, I lost her question. I've got it right here. Let's see. So I'll just, and you can, explain the backstory a little bit. This, you initially were going to perform this piece in the museum, live in person, before we were all able to say COVID-19, because it wasn't in our language back then. So I'd love to hear a little bit about your process evolving, and that relates to Mimi's question, which was, do you feel a connection between choreographing the Zoom scenes and choreographing the dance itself, and how does that relate to your thinking when you choreograph for a stage or for a museum or elsewhere?
Yeah, so this process has been a 2-year study on just coming from a place when I felt like a lot of things were shifting, and I started to really investigate the concept of the woman and this disoriented sense of time, and looked at how the body kind of feels in like that kind of jet lag type of feeling. And then I started to explore the aspects of time consciousness, and how time is not necessarily linear, but it's always kind of looping back on itself, and how our memories and our experiences are kind of shaping each new thing. So we're always influenced by the past or what we think may happen in the future. So that's where it began. And then working with dancers, we start working out how we can start to recall memories. I started to develop, get into some developmental patterns that are related to parts of the brain that are related to memory recall. And in the studio, when I first started working on this piece, we were working for the Spring Museum Arts, and we got locked down. So I've had a little bit of studio work with the dancers. A few of the dancers in this piece are different than the ones I worked with in the spring. So I had to think of a way to capture that connection and the connection that the dancers had in the studio, and kind of experiencing each other's memories through that kind of peripheral and also through different proximity. So we really explored that a lot with the Zoom, and the duet section and the trio section towards the middle was one way that the dancers were able to really connect a little bit one-on-one with each other, as opposed to just thinking that they're looking at a screen. So over the course of the last 3.5 months that we've been working on this, just virtually, the dancers have been able to kind of connect to each other in this way, which has been really rewarding for all of us. So it's been a fun process.
Yeah. I wonder if there's a healthy path you're discovering that we can all benefit from in terms of our Zoom presence, right? To make different kinds of connections that we're able to by doing things intimately together, even remotely, like the process of dancing where I don't just talk to you, but I respond to you and have to follow you along. I think that could make Zoom much more sort of bring us closer than it does in many ways. Frances Willis is asking, she says, the few shots that have just shown feet and legs, or the shots that have arms cut out, have been really interesting. So there's that, which obviously relates to the idea of the title, at least, Fragments. Can you talk about that a little bit, your use of cropping in this very tight space of the Zoom frame?
Yeah,
your theme?
I did spend some time on the spatial orientation of the dancers at different parts. There's a certain amount of looping in some of the sections, so we wanted the proximity of that to change for the viewer, and we also wanted to allow the viewer to have a different experience of what they see. As you said, when you see dancers live on stage, you're usually so far away, and you don't really get to see those kind of really micro movements that happen. And we decided that we wanted to kind of use the different spaces from the full body to parts of the body coming into the frame and out, as a way to be closer to each of the dancers and to have a relationship with them between the screens, as well as to have a relationship with the audience.
Am I muted? Help. No. Yeah, no, that was really wonderful and very effective. And I'm just so grateful to you for sharing this dance performance. We've been wanting to do something with that kind of live presence for a while in our museum nights. And there was the same as in a performance hall, there was a real sense of tension, even though it's on a screen, right? That sense of anything could happen, of time unfolding. It isn't a recording where you just watch it's inevitable because it's already recorded. It really is a wonderful experience, and I would encourage you to, while we have to continue to explore this format. And I think we have time for really just one more maybe sort of exchange, and I'd love to just hear your thinking about what you've gained from having to work in this new format, how that was. You touched on a little bit with the kind of intimacy, but there's so much we've lost having to isolate and quarantine. We'd love to hear about some things that you've discovered and have been rewarding for you in working this process.
Well, first, I just want to say thank you to you and all your help and the opportunity to share this with the Harn Museum community. And I want to give a shout out to Daniel Townsend, who has composed the music. So I think this opportunity has opened up new ways of thinking how to present choreography. And it has also opened up new connections and new opportunities for dancers and choreographers and composers and other artists to collaborate around the world. Some of the dancers in this piece weren't necessarily in Gainesville. And so that opened up that opportunity for them to be able to become a part of this, which was really wonderful. So I think we can just see this as a way to expand and the audience as well. I mean, there might have been audience members that were like, well, I can't go to the theater tonight, but hey, it's, I can look at this on YouTube, and this is just such a wonderful opportunity to bring this dance to everyone. So thank you.
Indeed. You're welcome. And thank you, Meredith. Truly, it's been a pleasure working with you. And I wish we could chat for another hour. I've got a lot more questions, but I'll look forward to speaking with you offline. Thanks so much. Bye-bye. I'm going to bring in Mimi Stocker now, my colleague at the Harn, or Mimi will bring herself in. And then we're going to share a conversation that Mimi orchestrated between Aaron Gordon and Jillian Marie Browning. Do you want to say a few words just before I roll the conversation, and then obviously about the Q&A after?
Sure. Hello. So as Eric was saying, I got in contact with Erin Gordon and Jillian Marie Browning. Jillian has shown her work at the Harn, and Erin was a former employee at the Harn. She's now at Southeast College, and she both Erin and Jillian agreed to have a conversation about Jillian's work. They've known each other for many years. So this conversation's pre-recorded, and then afterwards Jillian will join me and will be available for any questions that anyone has for her. So feel free to put those in the chat box, and we'll definitely get to answering them. So we can go ahead and play the video.
Good evening. My name is Erin Gordon, and I am the director of the Southeast Museum of Photography here at Daytona State. I am joined tonight by local Gainesville artist Jillian Marie Browning. Jillian and I have known each other for over 15 years. We both graduated from the photo program at UCF, and Jillian has an MFA degree in studio art from FSU. She is a nationally exhibiting artist who has work in the collections of the University of Maryland, the Center for Photography at Woodstock, and the University of Minnesota. I guess to start us off, can you briefly speak about your background and the broad themes of your work?
So my work primarily focuses on the contemporary Black experience, the idea of being someone who grew up in a Black femme body in the South, somebody who talks about family within their work and lineage and things like that.
So Jillian, your work has been featured in several exhibitions in Central Florida and around Alachua County. So folks may have already been familiar with your work. They might have seen you at the UF School of Art and Art History exhibition, the faculty show at the Harn last year. So if you don't mind, let's start with that series. There were about 30 cyanotypes on fabric displayed in these embroidery hoops, and they were clustered in kind of like an organic layout. Can you tell us what inspired that body of work and what went into creating that?
So this particular piece is called Matriarchal Line, and this is a series of cyanotypes, and a cyanotype is a contact printing medium, but basically you just kind of coat a piece of paper or fabric in a light sensitive emulsion, and then you put objects or negatives or anything like that on top of it, and it creates an imprint basically. And for these, I took the hair of me, my mother, and my two sisters, and I did it on fabric, and I put them in these embroidery hoops, and I was definitely sort of commenting on the idea of traditional women's work when it comes to art and craft, but also about the kind of a scientific look at the women within my family, and specifically hair texture within Black culture. So for me, I grew up only with sisters. I have a heavy female influence within my life, and when it comes to sort of hair and beauty within the Black Southern culture, it's a really big deal. It's a really sort of even controversial subject, and the idea of going natural basically is a really big subject. It's much more common now, where I've met teenagers even who have never had a relaxer before, but for me, I was 15 years old when I decided to cut all my hair off and go natural and kind of see what my hair texture was, but it was a struggle and an accomplishment to get other members of my family to also go natural. So it was my older sister, then my little sister, then my mother, and now my grandmother. But for this particular piece, I had my sisters and my mother cut off a very small piece of hair, and it was almost like I asked them to chop an entire arm off to give me this piece of hair. But then I made cyanotypes of my hair and their hair to kind of compare and show these different textures of hair, because my mother and my sisters, we all have completely different textures of hair. So there are 4 of us total in this work, and everyone's hair looks completely different. And that was also something that was super interesting to me that I wanted to really show. And then also while I was making it, it's kind of this idea of making these impressions or images of the individual hair piece, but then it also sort of started looking more abstracted, kind of like DNA, kind of like cells within the DNA, things growing in a petri dish because of their roundness, and sort of kind of thinking of a little bit more of a scientific sort of illustration like research of the hair within the women in my family.
That's really interesting. I think one thing that is striking about these images is how much they really do like look like a double helix, like a DNA strand. And then thinking about how hair does hold your chromosomes, it holds your DNA. You can actually get DNA samples from the hair. So it really is kind of like a small sampling of the thing that makes you you. And then how that thing makes you individual, how that thing makes you unique. So I really think that this piece is really very fascinating from that point of view, and also just like you were speaking of the kind of marriage between art and sciences and how you can see this as like a macrocosm but also as a microcosm as well. So you also had some work in the Rebel Girls show at the Thomas Center earlier this year, like right before COVID shut us all down. Can you speak about that show, how you got involved, and the work that you chose to display in that?
Yeah. So this particular show, I was approached because of sort of, I think, particularly this exact piece of work that I made. But I was approached to be a part of this as someone who kind of makes work about, political issues and like Southern heritage and things. And so I had two pieces within that. This was one of them. And this particular piece is called Painting the Rebel Flag Black. I made this right before the 2016 presidential election, where I was just seeing even more rebel flags being flown around where I live. I grew up in Ocala, Florida, and I was living there at the time that I made this piece. And that area is just, it's known a lot for its, basically KKK members, to be honest. So like I was just dealing with a lot of the idea and like in my brain, like the idea of seeing so much more of this, these rebel flags, so like lots of Trump flags, lots of sort of like the connection that a Trump flag in the South and a rebel flag are almost the same exact flag, basically. And there are even some people who have one side is the rebel flag and one side is the Trump flag on their car. Like it's just flying behind them. Like there's no way to not completely like stick those two things together and make them into their one actual thing. So for this piece, this is a set of stills from an actual video that I made of this piece, where I took a black substance that I made, like a black tarry substance, out of like my hair and pieces of my fingernails, spit, like charcoal, things to kind of make this thick black substance, where I would then rub this this black substance sort of physically and metaphorically, like imparting my blackness onto this flag that is very much so considered a symbol of oppression and a thing that I've always known and grown up to know as being like a red flag, basically. Like if you see this on someone's car or on their clothes, or that person is someone that is not going to be nice to you. This person may hurt you. This person has ideals that are not going to be great for you. So I really wanted to make this piece and kind of talk about that, and the idea that I'm not afraid of this flag. Like this flag is not something that I'm going to be afraid of, and I'm going to stand up to what this particular flag means and what it means to me, and I'm going to physically put myself onto this. The other piece, sorry, go ahead. The other piece that was in this was a soft human impersonating hard stone. So this is a series of images that are a performance, technically, where I coated myself in like white clay, and then I photographed myself as it sort of dried and flaked off. Almost a direct sort of like the opposite of the other piece, where I'm like, I'm so strong, I'm not afraid of this flag, like I'm gonna coat this flag in my blackness and like all this. And then the second piece is like, I'm actually really soft and like, like I put up a facade of being really hard, but it may be kind of hard to keep that up all the time. And I think that like very much so relates to like every moment, especially even like what's going on politically currently right now. It's like I'm definitely trying to like hold on and harden up and make myself less vulnerable, but it's breaking and it's peeking through.
I mean, I think that there's a lot to be said about both of these pieces. One thing I want to back up for just a second and go back to the Rebel Flag video. Can you speak about the response you've gotten from people who have seen this piece, if anyone has said anything to you, or if you've heard any direct responses of people viewing this piece.
Yeah, this is my most controversial Facebook piece. So this is basically the piece that like I have had the most arguments on the internet with people about. Not so much in person, like no one wants to come at me face to face about it, but I've definitely had a ton of people try to argue with me about what this is and what I'm doing with this particular piece. And lots of people arguing about like, oh, it's a heritage thing, it's not a hatred thing, it's a this. And that's cool, but I feel like if you feel the need to fight with me about it, then you're probably not on the right side of history about this particular piece. But yeah, I mean, this is the thing that I've literally fought the most about people on the internet about.
Yeah, I can imagine that. The one thing that strikes me very interestingly about these two pieces being in one show is the idea, in this one, you're painting the flag black. In the other one, you've covered yourself in clay, which is, I mean, the clay, was the type of clay that you chose deliberate? Because it is like a whiter based clay. Mm-hmm. And seeing that covering black skin, I think that there's definitely some deliberate choice there. I'm thinking that if you could speak on that and how you have literally kind of whitewashed yourself in these images.
So this particular one, I picked a gray clay because I was trying to like sort of appeal traditionally as like a rock, you know, like a gray rock. But also as I was making this, like that is the idea, like it was not intentional, but as I was making it and also kind of exploring it and talking to people about it, I did sort of like see that I had covered myself in this sort of, you know, like whiter substance. And basically when I was making this particular work was during the time when I was in grad school. It's one of the first things I made while I was in graduate school, where I was really struggling with who I was and who as an artist and what I wanted to create. And at this time I was, you know, really concerned about making my work more general for other people. And I think, you know, sort of inadvertently trying to make what I was doing not necessarily about my Blackness, when I honestly, because I'm pulling from personal experience, it's going to be about my Blackness anyway. And so I was kind of like really possibly even unintentionally trying to make this a little bit more universal by picking a neutral color gray clay instead of like a red clay or even a black clay, things like that. Like I think I was doing that unintentionally, but also probably intentionally.
Yeah, I think subconsciously, intentionally, because it is a fascinating piece to see, you know, the areas where it's kind of dried around your mouth and it's flaked off and you do see that skin tone come in. I think it's kind of that subconscious rejection of those same notions that you're talking about of like, I'm trying so hard to be this thing that's not quite me, and my body is literally rejecting it, and your personality is coming through even with that. So I think like for me, this is one of my favorite pieces. I know that it's one of your, you know, they used it for the Rebel Girl postcard because it is so striking and people are really drawn to it. So one thing I wanted to talk about was the importance of inserting your body into your work. It seems like, I mean, obviously you work a lot in self-portraiture, but even when it's not a direct self-portrait, you still are using parts of your body, your hair, like you said, making the tarry substance out of your fingernails and your spit and those types of things. So can you just speak about the importance of body and body image and that kind of thing within your work and your working method?
So for me, when I was developing who I was as an artist, like coming out of my undergraduate program, which was a very traditional photography program where you didn't really think of any conceptual ideas, like it was just like very traditional photography, right? But so I was like going into grad school thinking like, I want to make work that is about my experience as a person. And it wasn't even intentionally like, I'm going to make self-portraits. But as I was making this art, I was like, well, if I'm going to make this work about me, I think it's just going to be of me. And I think at the beginning, maybe it was of me because that was sort of the simplest way that I could talk about myself. But then as I started thinking of myself as an artist and what I wanted to do, it became like important that these things were about me and about my body specifically. And for me, it was because like if I'm going to make have a direct conversation about something that I feel vulnerable about, I want to put like my vulnerability there. I want it to be of me. I don't want to hide behind an abstracted concept about something. I want it to go ahead and just be of me. And also I think that really kind of helped when I was creating my art to kind of be able to distance like how I felt about certain things by making art about them. So like if I had something that I felt vulnerable or self-conscious about, I could make that into an artwork, and now that thing is a piece of art and not necessarily a part of my body. So now I have that distance, and it made me, I feel like, a lot freer in what I wanted to talk about and what I could talk about within my art, because I started to make that separation of body that is my body and body that is art that people can look at and people can talk about and even relate to. Because again, yes, it's a picture of me, but a lot of people have come to me and talked to me about how much they see themselves in what I was making, or the idea that I had, or the concept that I'm talking about, and how they can really see themselves in that. And that's super important to me, because I am really drawn to things that I can see myself in, even if it's directly not a picture of me. But that is super important to me, to be able to see myself in something instead of having to like find myself in something, if that makes sense.
I think that makes a lot of sense, especially, you know, coming from, when we think about the history of art and the canon of art history, it's so much of it is white and male. And I think that's the whole point of this Breaking the Frame exhibition, is that we celebrate women and other genders, especially people of color, outside of the hegemony and the hegemonic structure, so that we can think about art in other ways. So I think that that is exactly, you know, in line with the exhibition. Two things that I wanted to say while you were talking was, you know, I think the two things that stand out for me about your work is like how honest it is. You talk about making yourself very vulnerable and putting yourself out there, but also how relatable it is. You make your work very personal and very much about, you know, your interior life, your private life, the lived experience that you have. But I think people, by doing that, other people can see themselves in it. Other people can explore, you know, those themes and those things that maybe they haven't thought about or have not put into a visual, you know, medium before and seen it actually exhibited from an art perspective. So I think that in that regard, I think your work is more universal than, you know, making just, as you said, like an abstracted version of it. So one thing that I want to talk about a little bit, to bring it back to the Breaking the Frame exhibition at the Harn right now, is that I know that there's two artists in the show that you admire, and those two artists being Carrie Mae Weems and Kara Walker. So I wondered if you could discuss their work, how their work influenced your artistic voice and your working method, if they did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so those two artists, like, yes, they're like probably the two most famous Black female photographers that you could like think of. But for me, like finding those artists like on my own, because I didn't have like faculty tell me who those people were. Like you would think that would be like the first people you would learn about as like a Black girl going through like photography school. But I found that work by myself, and like finding that and being like, oh, so like that's what art I can make can be. And for me specifically, it was the use of family within Carrie Mae Weems' work. I specifically saw a piece at an exhibition called All the Women in My Family. And seeing that, I was like, oh my God, so like this is the work that I can produce. I can make art that looks like this is it. And that was like legitimately so eye-opening for me. And then with Lorna Simpson, it is like basically her self-portraiture. Like I wasn't directly like being like, I'm gonna be just like Lorna Simpson, but by making like self-portraits, but seeing again like what her work and what her self-portraits can mean, and again using your own body to have like a base, like a general idea of something. Like that was opening up like my eyes with things that I was not taught in school, to be like, this is what the art that I can make can be. And also just seeing like someone who looks like me making art, it's a huge thing. It's a huge thing.
Absolutely. One thing that strikes me when I look at Carrie Mae Weems' kitchen table series is like, I can see her, you know, you work in series as well. So seeing those kind of like, this is a static shock. It almost looks like a set on a movie stage or something, and there's like a sequence of images that kind of tell a narrative. Yours don't necessarily tell a narrative, but they do have that kind of set sequence series kind, you know, it's meant to be viewed as a grouping rather than a standalone image. So I can definitely kind of see the influence there. And then Kara Walker, her silhouettes, I think, have been a little bit maybe influential in some of your more recent work, which if we want to talk about the Southern Gentle Lady series, I think that ties in nicely with the Breaking the Frame exhibition, if you want to speak a little bit about that series.
Yeah, so this particular series, I'm sort of playing with two ideas when it comes to this. So like it's sort of this work and also this work. And I created this one first, and then kind of the other one second. And one is maybe kind of a sketch of the other. Maybe they're two different things. Not quite sure yet. They're works. Maybe they play off of each other. We'll see what happens. But basically, this is based off of Langston Hughes' poem, and it's the idea that of Black womanhood and the idea that Black women are always supposed to be so strong. Again, like playing off of my soft human piece, and the idea that you have to be so strong, but you also sometimes just can't be that strong. And the idea that that oftentimes white women are very protected and often like infantilized, honestly. When it comes to like to certain things, and a lot of Black women are never really happens to Black women. Oftentimes Black women are like over sexualized and like, you know, made into being adults even when they're children. Like there's 12-year-old girls that are being called women, like little Black girls, just because they are little Black girls. So I'm kind of like playing with this Langston Hughes poem, and then using and then using the idea of soft things and the idea of vulnerability within making this work. So these are, again, they are cyanotype, but they're also specifically on bed sheets. So yes, they're drapey fabric, but I made this one specifically on bed sheets to kind of talk about the idea of a vulnerable place, often your bed, a place where it's your area, like it's your area of comfort and your area of solace. And I was like, so playing with that. And then when I made this kind of thing that plays off of that, I wanted to kind of do the same idea, but I wanted to play around with the transparency of what I could do with that. So this is a lot more drapey and soft, but also solid. And these I wanted to play with transparency. I still have the drapey fabric, but I wanted to use a thin tool that you can see through. I had this window I could play with this work. So I wanted to play with the transparency of what I could get and still that softness.
So I know that you currently have work on display at the Good News Gallery in High Springs. What other exhibitions do you have coming up, and what can you tell us about that work?
So I'm currently working on a new series right now that will live like this or like this, not quite sure yet. But these are, they are going to be on display at Moisturizer Gallery, an online exhibition coming up, I'm pretty sure next week. But these are a new body of work that I'm sort of playing with the idea again of like family and womanhood, and also the idea of like basically when you are born. Like you are born, if you have female reproductive organs, with the amount of ovum you will have for the rest of your life. So the idea that when my mother was growing inside of my grandmother's body, she was growing me potentially, right? Her ovum within there. So that I had this connection to my grandmother even before I was thought of being conceived. So when I was making these images, I was playing with the idea of kind of sticking them together and cells dividing, even kind of floating within amniotic fluid, and like the idea of what that's like and the connection that you have to basically the women in your family. And kind of what that means. I'm not 100% sure about where these are coming from yet, or how they will live, if they will be images printed on paper, if they will be images that will be on fabric, if they will just be, you know, ephemeral images that you remember in your brain after you saw this presentation. You know, I'm not quite sure yet, but I am working on this idea. And I will also have a solo exhibition at Good News Gallery in High Springs that opens on November the 21st. Well, there'll be work like this and also some other work that I'm working on that kind of is along this same theme.
Very cool. I love to see how your work has evolved. This really looks like it's built upon the same ideas as Matriarchal Line, but has gone in a totally different direction. I mean, I think that all of your work is very cohesive. It looks like one continuous body of work that's just continually expanding, just like our cells are. So I think that that's really, really cool. I think we're just about out of time, so I just want to thank you so much, Jillian, for speaking with us today about your artwork. You can see more of Jillian's work on her website at jillianmariebrowning.com, and you can follow her on Instagram at jillianmariebrowning. Thank you, everybody, for joining us this evening. I believe there's going to be a live Q&A session with Jillian later, so get your questions ready, and thank you all. Have a good night.
So that was a really wonderful conversation between Jillian and Aaron. Thank you so much. Mimi's just getting up to speed to connect with Jillian, and we'll bring her in momentarily to continue the conversation. In the meantime, I will share with you all just a couple little notes. One is that, where are my little notes? Again, if you have any comments, we put in the live chat a survey link. We'll put that back in there again. We'd love to hear your thoughts about this evening's program and things we can do to connect with you in the future. This is a monthly program. Also, while Mimi and Jillian are connecting, there's possibly a little technical issue in the background. I will remind you to check out our Harn at Home art activities. We have one connected to Breaking the Frame, the exhibition that's on view now at the museum that we're celebrating this evening with this whole program. I guess I'll also do a little shout out here to Susan Cooksey. Susan Cooksey is one of the curators of Breaking the Frame along with her colleagues, Dulce Ramon, Carol McCusker, Elisa Payton. But Susan let us know recently that she's retiring, and so this is her last month. Oh, I'm being asked a question, excuse me, it's technical and I have to read. Right, so I was saying about Susan Cooksey, shout out to Susan. She's been a wonderful colleague at the museum. She has curated an amazing array of exhibitions, and I'd encourage you before November 29th to see Peace Power Prestige, Metal Arts from Africa, an exhibition now in view in the rotunda of the museum. Again, the museum is currently open Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m., and Sunday, 1 to 5 p.m. And great time to come in the museum. And we are following safety protocols, including masks are required, no neck gaiters, this is UF policy, no vent masks, this is UF policy. Maintaining social distance, we're doing extra cleaning to make sure surfaces are hygienic. And it's a great place to visit of an afternoon, free parking on weekends and after 3:30. And the museum itself is always free. So we invite you to come by. Not only that, we also have a lot of activities online that you can check out, harn.ufl.edu. You'll find art activities you can do at home. You'll find lots of videos. Also, our YouTube channel maintains our record of museum nights. Looks like Jillian's about to join us. This is exciting. So you can always go back and watch our other videos. Ah, there's Julian. Hi, Jillian, excuse me. How are you doing?
Good.
Excellent. Mimi, you're there? Have we got audio?
Yes.
Fantastic. I'm going to check out and enjoy the conversation.
Hey, Jillian. Sorry about all of our technical difficulties. There's always something that happens. But thanks so much for coming on, and to you and Aaron both for recording that. It was amazing. Your work is so powerful. And I'm just so glad that we could have you on tonight. So there's a few questions in the chat. So I will get to those. The first one is from Bo Brummel, and they asked, Jillian, you talked about your rebel flag piece in the context of Facebook responses. We also know you're a gallery artist. Do you work for both online and gallery contexts? And do you think differently in each?
So for me, I'm also a lot about making my work accessible for people and for people to see it. It's more important for me for people to see it versus like it being put in a gallery space or on a museum wall. So I don't necessarily make work to be put in one certain area, but I do really freely share my work on the internet because I want people to see it. And like a lot of times that is Facebook, a lot of it is Instagram as well. But yeah, like I don't think any differently. I don't make work any differently thinking of, am I going to put it on the internet versus am I going to put it in a gallery? Because the most important thing is that I want people to see it and I want to know what people think about it and like create a conversation. So whether that be on the internet or in a gallery space, they're really not different spaces for me.
Right. And it's so much easier to like have that back and forth online or on social media. Let's see. Betsy Myers asks, Jillian, you work with so many different mediums. At what point in the conception of an idea does the medium come into play, and how does that affect your outcome?
So a lot of it is me sort of thinking of a conceptual idea and kind of having a list of those, and then a list of processes or like mediums that I want to do. And sometimes I'll kind of link them up, or sometimes when I'm working with a medium, I think of a concept that can fit within what I'm doing with that. But also too, it's a lot of whatever the process is of the art making. Is there a concept that goes with that process? Like is the action that I'm then putting on this particular piece to actually make it, how does that relate to the concept? Because for me, both of those things they're one. I don't necessarily make something in a certain way for no reason. So a lot of it is just kind of trying to piece concepts and materials together and kind of see what happens. A lot of what I do too is possibly an accident. So sometimes things just turn out a certain way and you're like, look at that, did that on purpose the whole time. But like, so a lot of times just kind of like comes like even like as it's happening, maybe the piece will change or the concept will even change kind of as I mess something up and it kind of turns into something else. But
right. I feel like sometimes the best pieces come out of like those situations. So do you work with a lot of materials that might be like new to you if they fit the concept that you're trying to achieve?
Yeah, because my formal education is in straight photography, so I don't have a lot of like education, like academia education within other materials. So like when it comes to me trying something, a lot of times it's literally just I saw someone else do it, or I saw a YouTube video, or I saw a substance that I was like, that process looks really cool, or that material looks really cool. I'm gonna try to do that, and kind of like, but what I do with that. So, you know, a lot of times like a photo related thing or an alternative process related thing. But a lot of it is just me trying things out. And a lot of times I'm not using it correctly. But like art happens out of that, and or like a lot of it too is just a lot of independent research when it comes to what that thing is, or that process is, or the history behind that process, and then how that relates to what I'm doing and my work in general.
Right. Yeah. And I feel like anything can be an art material if you want it to be, really.
Absolutely.
Let's see. We have another question. Discussing rebel flags, you made a comment about being on the right side of history. Are you optimistic about history?
Okay, so maybe. I would say that with people who are of a similar age to me, and also kind of like the outcome that we've seen, like the basically like the reaction that people have been having for societal things that are happening so far, especially over this sort of quarantine period and things that have been happening and protests and things, people are becoming more aware. So that is really great. Like people are becoming more aware of things. It's a lot less sort of swipe it under the rug. We'll just forget about that. But I will also say too that complacency is pretty common within this culture, and I don't necessarily know if things are going to become exactly what we need them to be even within my lifetime. But I would say optimistic, yes, mostly, because I think that, you know, young people are becoming more informed and becoming more vocal about things as they're becoming more informed. But yeah, I don't think it's getting worse. So
right. Did you guys record this pre election results?
Yes, we did. Mm-hmm.
And then yeah, just I heard you say that you'll research the material that you're using, and that reminds me too a lot of Kara Walker, her Art 21 video on the installation she did at the Domino factory. She talks a lot about how she made this sculpture from sugar, and how deeply she went into the history of sugar. So I think that's really interesting. And your work really does kind of, it's both like performance and photography and a little bit of installation. It feels like Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Because I'm not very much of like take a photograph and kind of like print it on paper kind of a person. And also too, like when it comes to materials that I do and I talk about how that material relates to the concept, I also don't use things by accident either. And I talk about it in my talk a little bit about how like, even like the all the materials that are used, the text panel that goes with that, the title of that piece, that's all part of the work. Like reading what the work is made of is also part of experiencing the work. Like all of that is it's one thing, and so that's like pretty important to like my art process and stuff as well. So
Right. And then I just had a question. What drew you to the cyanotype process?
Well, it's first of all, it's a super accessible process that like a lot of people can do. And I've been like during this whole sort of like quarantine, stay at your home sort of like area the last couple of months, I've gotten into like the Instagram cyanotype scene. And so I've been doing cyanotypes for years. I learned the process in undergrad during my photography program because it is one really accessible to learn, but also it's really easy to teach. So and like when it comes to alternative process photography, like that's something that's super simple to kind of be your first stepping stone into maybe more difficult processes. And a lot of people, because the accessibility of these chemicals and the easiness of the process, a lot of people over sort of quarantine have developed like they've discovered cyanotypes. So it's been actually a really cool like little community to like meet people and talk about stuff. And like now there's like this whole talk of now that it's becoming winter, people are getting like indoor UV light setups, and like everyone is like buying lights and trying lights and like tagging each other. Like, I just bought this light. I know that you have this light. What do you do? It's like really fun. So that's also become like a really fun aspect of like this process that I love and that I'm doing a lot and more with now, but like other people are using it as well. So it's like, really, it's really fun. So
yeah, there's a Facebook cyanotype group that has people from like all over the world. It's really cool. I just had one more question for you. The piece that was towards the end of the presentation, that was kind of the two inverted.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know now, like, is there one that you're leaning towards over the other, or
no?
No.
No, I currently have some work up in an online show at Moisturizer Gallery where the positive ones are those are posted. So they live currently like that in this sort of gallery space, but I still don't really know exactly how they're gonna live, or maybe both of them just live like that and they're two different bodies of work, or they're two sides to each other, or something like that.
Okay, this is actually the last question. So the piece in the Rebel Flag piece, did you keep the finish like after you painted it? Does that like live as its own piece now?
Yeah, no, I have that flag still, yes. And I've shown that piece a couple of times, but the first time I showed it, I did show it with the flag. So basically it was like you were walking into a room to watch the video, and the outside of the room had that flag on the outside of the wall. So that was the first thing you saw. And then sort of out of context, then you'd walk in and you would see the video. So I do have that flag.
Yeah, and people in the chat are thanking you and thanking you for showing your amazing body of work. And yeah, just thank you so much for doing this. Thank you, Erin. Erin asked some really awesome questions, and just really happy that this worked out and you were able
Thank you for having me. It's super fun. I love this stuff.
I can't wait to go see. I'm gonna go check out your stuff that's on the moisturizer. It's on their website?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And we can share that link too, so other people can check it out. All right. Well, thanks so much.
Yes, thank you so much.
Bye.
Mimi, thanks so much for that great conversation with Jillian. I love her work. I love what she has to say, and I loved your conversation with her. Thank you I'm just full of love tonight. This is a great evening because we had so many talented people, so many talented women talking about art, sharing their art, dancing. I just thought it was really energizing. And I thank you, Mimi, for being a central part of making it all possible. We are going to have a museum night in another month. It's always the second Thursday of each month. Our theme next month is Museum Nights.
Local vocal.
Local vocal. Isn't that a great title? It's going to be fun. We're going to be talking with local creatives. And watch our website, harn.ufl.edu/museum nights for more information about that upcoming program. As I've said before, there's lots to do in our website. The museum is open. We'd love to see you at the museum Thursday through Sunday. And we hope you're all safe. We hope you're all well. We hope you're all being creative. And have a great evening and a wonderful weekend. Good night.
Good night.